Okay, you guys ready? We'll start with the Public Building Commission. Sure. The Ellis County Public Building Commission meeting will now come to order. Bobby, please note that all board members are present.
Okay.
And I don't believe there's any changes to the agenda. Approval of prior minutes. I think I seen them a long time ago.
Correct.
Yeah, so I didn't have any objections then, so the minutes will stand as submitted. Consideration of accounts payable. Anything there, Darren?
No, sir. No positive or no accounts payable since we don't really have any ongoing projects. It's just
Okay.
formalities of having the bond payments for the different buildings.
Okay. And is there a project manager report?
The only thing that's really changed since the last time is the last time we had the building. It doesn't really have to deal with the PBC, but the project outside in the parking lot. As you can tell, the bank has been demolished and half the parking lot has been replaced and striped. So as soon as the contractor is done with 27th Street, they're paving out there now. They'll be back to redo the center portion of our parking lot, as well as we're going to try to get them to do some other parking lot repairs that are where some of the pavement's cracking out and failing in there. So
Okay.
other than that, that's about it.
Okay, there's no executive sessions with this. Commissioners, any comments, concerns?
No.
Okay, then the Public Building Commission meeting will adjourn at 5:01. The Ellis County Board of Commissioners meeting will now come to order. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Bobby, if you could call the roll.
Commissioner Joe LaRue.
Here.
Chair Butch Schleier.
Present.
Commissioner Neil Younger.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. No changes to the order of business. We will have one executive session this evening. Prior minutes, April 4th. Commissioners, any concerns?
Nope. Everything looked good.
Okay, then the minutes stand as submitted. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, items A through G.
Okay,
I'll second it.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Any issues from persons not on the order of business? All looks quiet out there. Monthly financial reports, commissioners, any concerns?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, our next agenda item then is DSNWK and Access Transportation Update. Jerry and Wade.
I just about said good morning. It's been a Monday. Commissioners, thank you for the time this evening. Jerry Michaud, President for Developmental Services. Definitely appreciate the chance to give you an update on where things are at. We put a few items before you, so hopefully you have those. But just first want to say thank you for the level of support from the county. It truly is gap filling support, and when we're back before you in June, we'll kind of talk through all the details. But the core of services and essential aspects of service really make up about 93% of all the funds that come from the county go right to those elements. We have CDDO operations, which stands for Community Developmental Disability Organization. It's kind of on our oversight of the region, and about 7% of the resources land in that zone. Kind of a quick view of our impact, and I think that's what you have shown on the screen. For Ellis County, we just under 170 employees. That's a pretty big footprint. I'm sorry, that's not employees. That's individuals served from the county. About 207 employees. Sorry for that confusion there. You'll also note that there is a waiting list number. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. There's 103 individuals from, on the statewide waiting list. That number is over 4,400 statewide of people waiting, and the wait is a ridiculous amount. I think they're serving folks with a request date of June 1st, 2012. So almost 10 years of wait. That's a tough situation for families. Continuing along, there's a breakdown of the various services that are provided by for Ellis County, and all the long spikes, if you will, in the graphics. That's Ellis County. It's where we have our lion's share of service, though we serve the 18 counties. I won't go through all the details on those unless you have any questions. The next thing that I wanted to touch on was the workforce crisis. And it is, I know everyone is feeling it in terms of, you see the hiring notices around town. Everybody is looking for help. We've been in kind of a very difficult place in terms of affecting what we can do with starting wages, and that's another major contributing factor. But our turnover rate is actually a little bit higher than the national rate, 48%, which is terrible, but it is a reality that we work with. We have been communicating with our legislative body about affecting rates so that we can actually pay a wage that attracts staff. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our staff who are standing in the gap and filling in. We've got vacant positions, some of which haven't been filled. We've got a nursing position that's open since September. They're needed to be filled. So we've got everybody else is kind of standing in and filling in. I know I saw an employment report just earlier today. We got some people working between 65 and 94 hours a week, which is crazy. So we're working on that. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to receive some relief through the legislative process. We'll see here in the next probably couple of weeks to a month on that. So workforce is a big challenge, and talked about waiting list already. So let me just keep on moving along here. We have all kinds of additional needs with upkeep of buildings and vehicles and all those kinds of things, of which there's not a lot of resources for. That's why we pursue grants, and again, appreciate the chance to stand before the commission for a letter of support for our tax credits. We'll be putting that in later this month. I wanted to touch on a little bit about, that's kind of the heavy side of things. What I want to talk about a little bit is some of the exciting things that are happening for our downtown store, Custom Creations. There's the flyer that we put up here shows the images that show up on our electronic marquee within the building. If you haven't had a chance to walk into the building, I'd encourage you to do so. These would be the information that shows up on the slideshow that's just kind of a repeat. And the store is much more than a store. It's obviously the things that are created by the individuals that we support. Kind of pretty amazing. This is not an advertisement. Pretty amazing creations at what they do with some of the furniture pieces. But there's much more to that. It's also a window for lots of folks who don't really know a lot about the developmental disability world, and it's an opportunity for them to see that a little bit more clearly. And we have some interactive pieces that connect our satellite locations for if we have collaborative work that's happening with Fort Hays. For example, they're teaching a class inside the store. This is just kind of on the beginning stages. We were able to loop in our other individuals from the outlying areas that they can participate in a virtual way. So it's kind of a fun connection for them and a great outlet for them to be able to share their talents. So that's a very, very positive thing. that we're grateful to have. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is just a couple of impacts. And I know I'm probably pushing my time here, but we had an encounter with some of our founding folks. So you may be familiar with the Homer B. Reed Center, the Reed Center down on 13th Street. This last November, we were able to bring back a few members of that family. Homer B. Reed's son came out with his daughter and spent some time with us. And it was just a great connection of 50 years plus of history that kind of started back in that day, and the people are still connected today, which is just kind of an amazing story. The other story that I wanted to share is Bonnie Burr. Bonnie was one of our founding board members, had a child with a disability from way up in the northwest corner, up in Cheyenne County. And just actually last week, her daughter showed up. She serves on the board. Bonnie served on our board up until the time that she passed away, just this last year. In May, I believe, we're coming up on the anniversary. But her daughter shows up, and Robin and her daughter shows up, who lives in Massachusetts. And so I got to meet the granddaughter, who has been a faithful supporter. I saw the last name in our donor recognition, but I never met her. And I thought, what a legacy. Grandma, Mom, serves on our board and really affected the direction of the organization. And here we are 2 generations later, and there's still the commitment to our mission. So that is the impact, the commission, that you all help us to continue to carry that out. We couldn't do it without all the pieces working together. So, any questions? I hope that maybe gets us where we wanted to be, maybe about 10 minutes shorter.
Yeah, Jerry, I have a question for
Yes,
you.
yes.
And in regards to that waiting list,
Yes.
you said there's some people might have been waiting since 2012.
Yes,
What is the reason for that? Is it all funding?
yes. Yeah, well, it's funding and it's capacity to serve. So if for some reason there was a chunk of money that said, okay, we're gonna support everybody that's waiting today, we would have a workforce challenge to be able to accomplish that.
Yeah,
So
I know
it's got-
today we
yeah,
would.
Yeah. So it takes really both pieces, building that capacity and serving people, but it's an awful long wait for people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Commissioners, questions for Jerry?
Sure. I was just curious, I noticed on the slide where it talked about services the organization offers, and I'm sure to some extent COVID impacted a lot of the in-home services you could do, but out of all the ones that you mentioned, FamLink is a big zero
Big ol'
across the
zero.
board.
Right.
Was that COVID? Was that personnel? Was that budget?
Actually, it was probably a little bit of COVID, but it was based on a referral process that has since changed since the first of the year. And so we're actually busy in that program. But yeah, the stats don't show anything. They show it as a big zero.
Yeah, just thought I'd ask because
Yeah.
that just kind of jumps out at you on
Yeah,
that slide.
it's a grant-funded program, and so it's an exciting thing, but the referrals have been limited in terms of how they could come in, and now that's expanded. So that's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Thanks.
Okay, very good. Appreciate the question. Anything else?
Mr. Neal?
I have no question, just thanks for what you do and
Okay.
keep looking for help. Good
All right,
luck.
yeah. Very good. Well, thank you. I'm gonna.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, let Wade take over.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Wade Cruz. I'm the Transportation Manager for DSNWK and Access Public Transportation here in Hayes. I want to first say thanks for the money that you guys give for public transportation every year to help support the offset the costs of our vehicles and maintenance and insurance and our staff. Due to the COVID, we really never lost any of our staff. We've always maintained our staff, which is very rare in my organization. I just came from a KDOT meeting today where there was actually a transportation agency in the state of Kansas that had to shut down all their public transportation for their county because they didn't have staff. I am one of the few in the state that actually retained its total staff the whole entire time of COVID, so we were one of the fortunate ones. To get to my slide presentation, as you can see, back in 2020, the numbers went way down. That's when COVID started hitting us hard. And during that time frame, we get our funding And I'll kind of give you a brief history of how we get our funding. We get our funding from the FTA, who gives it to KDOT, who then gives it to the public transportation agencies. It's an 80-20 split, which means they cover 80% of our costs, and we have to have local match of 20%. During the first part of the 2020, when COVID really hit us hard, the FTA had mandated that all public transportation agencies in the state of the United States had to wear masks. Currently, we are still under that guidelines, and we will follow it as long as the FTA and KDOT say we have to. Now, that's supposed to expire next week on the 18th, but from the word I've been hearing, it's going to be extended out again. So, unfortunately, we have to mandate the masks on them because FTA does say that we could get fined up to $10,000 for every incident that we allow somebody on our bus without a mask. So, hopefully they'll release it sooner, and hopefully our numbers will start growing back up. The miles driven is basically the miles kind of evened out after we got past the big hump in COVID. So the money that you guys provide us help cover the cost of the fuel and the insurance and the staff members that we currently have. KDOT is getting ready to release its next fiscal year's KDOT grants in the near, probably the next month. It'll be for the July to June 30th of 2023. We are expected to get the funding that we requested along with your local match you guys give us every year, which will help us provide our services for Ellis County. So any questions for me on public transportation for the?
Jerry, with the, not Jerry, Wade.
Yeah.
With the cost of fuel being so uncertain as it is,
Yep.
do you have to go up on any of your prices?
We did a study. I'm on the Kansas Public Transportation Association's board, so I sit on that board with the Kansas Public Transportation Agencies in Kansas. Right now, KDOT is not making us mandatory up. They are giving us a little extra money to help offset the cost of the fuel. Most agencies in the state of Kansas, we charge $2 for a ride in the city of Hayes and $4 for county rides. That is pretty much standard all the way across the state. Now, KDOT is predicting that we're probably going to have to raise our rates probably by the end of the year, if it keeps going the way it is. So hopefully we won't, because then we're going to lose a lot more people, because some people don't like to pay. As I heard, the taxis in town went to $7 a ride one way, so we're still the cheapest in town, so.
Okay.
Thanks,
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Neal?
No, thanks for what you do.
All righty. Thank you, Commissioners. Have a
Well,
good evening.
thank you, Wade.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is the Historical Society update. Brad?
Good evening, Commissioners. Brad Rickey, Ellis County Liaison to the Ellis County Historical Society. Tonight, they are behind me. I thought maybe they left me up here. I am joined with Amanda Rupp, who is our interim director, and also Adam Conkey, who is our historian. And then Priscilla is here, our president. However, we didn't want to get too congested up here, so she's in the audience anticipating everything that we're going to say here. So our last progress report was actually on February 14th. And since then, we've been doing a lot, of course. This is our progress report to you, to just give you an idea of what we've been up to. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see upstairs in the main floor of the administrative building, but we asked if we could put a display, move some of our stuff that's down on our 7th Street campus and allow us a little bit more room to bring up here to display in the administrative building. If you haven't seen that, it's really worth your time. I brought Adam here today to give, now he's a historian, so I've already got a rein on him that he's not going to take too much time. But it would be really appropriate, since he's invested so much time and got a haircut.
Just for this. Not because it's hot out or anything.
He invested so much time in putting some of the all the exhibits together. I think it would be a really good opportunity for him to explain to you guys, and as well as everybody here at the Ellis County Administrative Building, what exactly they're seeing in that display. Adam?
Well, thank you for your time, Commissioners. The display upstairs is a part of a temporary exhibit that we would like to showcase different things throughout the entire year. At this point, we focused a little bit more on graduation season, and the growing season of agriculture as well. So if you do get a chance to look at it, it involves a lot of the history of Fort Hays State University, the fort itself, also the experiment station that was granted over to the Kansas State University itself. And then side exhibits that are included in it, there was a fellow by the name of Mike Unrein. While he was at the college back in 1918, he had invented a harvester to put onto a tractor at the time. And so that's on display along with the patents. And it shows pictures of him demonstrating his machine. So have fun looking at that if you get a chance. There is also a newspaper up there from 1930 that talks about Sheridan Coliseum having a big debate of whether they should hold off growing wheat because there was a surplus grown at the time. They thought if they brought the surplus back down, they would have a raise in wheat prices. It's a very interesting read, and it reads right into what happened in 1935 with the Dust Bowl here in this county. So I'll leave it to Brad now.
All right. Yeah, and I also appreciate our county manager and his, county administrator and his insight not to put firearms in that display right next to our county treasury. You know, it always takes an open mind to think of those type of things. Thanks, Darren. And speaking of firearms, we are getting ready for our summer exhibit at the Stone Church. Adam and I have been going through, it seems like countless firearms.
They're countable, but there's a lot.
And yeah, we're taking photographs of them in various positions, documenting all of their serial numbers and whatnot, and we're getting them prepared for our summer exhibit that will be in this Stone Church, which we hope to have available to everybody every weekend this summer. Our members will have free access to that. Those that don't have memberships will be invited to get a membership, but if not, then they'll pay a small sum to see that exhibit. And then we're also at the beginning of the summer going to have our gun raffle. It did very well for us last year at our 50th anniversary. We're going to try this again. And as you can see on your sheets, those two firearms that we're thinking about raffling this year, not going to have 22 calibers. I don't want to give it away because I don't want to steal Amanda's thunder as to once we get those flyers and the tickets ready to go. But I think we're going to generate a lot of interest in that. We also met with the Hays City Commission on March 3rd. I think Amanda did a super job in just advising them what we've been up to as well. The Ellis County Commission has the opportunity for me to harass you guys every 2 months. We really wanted to kind of fill them in as to what we're up to as well, so that perhaps if we ask for a little bit more in our budget from them, they'll understand why we would do something like that. So let me see. Don't also forget about the fact that we'll have our guns that'll be on display this summer. Don't forget about the Fire Museum. We'll also have our Vogel German House that'll be available, and also the Saddle Shop. We plan to have our 2023 budget either before or at June 1st, 2022. If you guys don't mind, I'd like to get with all three of you individually and maybe sit down with a cup of coffee and just maybe explain some of the things that we're thinking for the future of the Ellis County Historical Society. Lastly, we've got our newsletter that's going to come out hopefully by the end of the month-ish. And other than that, does the commission have any additional questions for us?
What is the raffle ticket going to cost? Or don't we know yet?
The committee needs to have not met since we've made these decisions on which ones we're getting, so they need to decide
Okay.
what the final total is.
Okay.
It's a little extra for the winning ticket, Butch, so.
I was just going to say.
Usually works that way, doesn't it?
Exactly.
I don't know if I can just mention a couple other things that we have going on for the summer. That display hasn't been out for a number of years since we were gifted it. or permanent loan from the Sternberg Museum. So I think it'll generate a lot of outside the county interest. It's a very large collection, and we plan to put up a ramp that will give access to everyone into that Stone Church area. So that has been obviously a hindrance of our facility and our ways that we can serve the entire public. So it's a really important part. So hopefully there'll be a lot more stirred interest. So.
Commissioner Neal, do you have any questions?
Yeah, who are you bringing next time? You guys' participants are just growing. You guys are doing leaps and bounds. I appreciate that.
We have a amazing board this year. People say that with a large board you don't get as much done, maybe, but the ones that we have are young, energetic, and it's hard for a part-time staff, a small staff, to be able to touch on every large projects that need to be happening at the same time right now. And in each of the committees, we have a great leader that is able to take on those things and move them further without a lot of second discussion along the side. So it's wonderful. Got some good
You guys
people on the
are
board.
ready? You have that on your plan to do another raffle for fundraising? How great. Thank you, guys.
Well, and our employees are saying how great a board we have. We also, I'm telling you, we've been pushing our employees extremely hard. We lost one part-time employee, and these two here we've got a board of great people that have great ideas, and somebody's got to be the doers, and these two are usually it. And for the wage that they get and the time that they're allotted, especially with the increase in inflation and whatnot, it gives us a little concern that we're gonna lose these two. Well,
It's passion.
okay, then never mind, we'll pay them the same. But regardless, enough for me. Commissioners, do you have any other questions? I know you guys have a full agenda.
Commissioner Joe?
No, just it's amazing the progress you guys have made inside of a year. I remember last year in June, bluntly, it was a train wreck, and you guys more than have handled it. I mean, you're super organized. You've got a handle on everything. You have things mapped out well ahead in advance, and more importantly, you've come and you've given us regular updates so that we can track progress. That makes it easier for us to visit you guys in June and have an understanding of what it is we're able to help with. So just echoing what the other two commissioners said, thank you so much for what you've done this past year.
Thank you for your support. We'll be in touch individually, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, our next agenda item is the Midwest Energy Substation conditional use permit. Justin?
Good evening, Commissioners. Justin Craig, Environmental Services Interim Director. Before you tonight is the CUP 2209 for a Midwest Energy Substation. With me is Dave McDaniel, if you have some more questions. Oh, there you are also. And Nathan McNeil is also here representing Midwest Energy if you have any other questions.
Fellow Commissioners, I will recuse myself because that's my place of employment.
Oh,
Good
okay.
afternoon, Commissioners. David McDaniel, Chairman of the Joint Planning Commission. Tonight, I'm here to address with you CUP Conditional Use Permit number 2209. This is a permit for Midwest Energy. On behalf of Robert Kirk and Colleen Dickinson, the property owners, it was presented by Nathan McNeil at our meeting on the 23rd of March. It is for a substation for Midwest Energy. I believe you have the information in front of you in your packet. I'd like to address with you the complete staff report. All the things that were required of Midwest Energy were supplied to us at that meeting. The 9 points, you probably have those in front of you, and then it was our job to go through those and to go through our findings of fact, which are the 11 points that you see in front of you that were made that night. The petition came before us, as I said, on the 23rd of March. April 6th was the protest period deadline. There were no protests on this. So briefly, the documentation was complete, the fees were paid, the notifications of the property owners were made, The sign was posted as required. The public hearing was held, as I said, and the protest period was taken care of. So at this point, we are asking that you approve, disapprove, or ship it back to us as a committee.
Commissioner, do you have any questions?
No questions. I think it's pretty straightforward. The public has been given ample opportunity to weigh in and address concerns, if any, and none have been presented, so I'm
Yeah,
happy.
I've heard no objections to this either. So I'll make a motion to approve CUP 2029 to allow Midwest Energy construct a substation located 1.9 miles east of Walker Avenue on Severn Road in a rural Ellis County, as the zoning regulations have been followed and approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on March 23rd, 2022. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 2-0.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, planning and zoning appointments. Justin.
Again, Justin Craig, Environmental Services Interim Director. Since June 30th of last year, the Planning and Zoning Board has been short one member, as someone decided not to renew their term. Coming before you tonight to ask you, or to let you know, we did receive one citizen's interest form from Mason Reuter, so I'm coming before you tonight to ask to appoint him to a 3-year term effective immediately. And during this time, Dave McDaniel also advised us that he would like to renew his 3-year term effective July 1st of this year. So I'd like to get those guys appointed to the board
Okay.
and fill us up.
Well, I think both those guys know what they're doing, so there's no objections here. Commissioner Neal?
Me either.
Joe?
No objection.
Okay, do we hear a motion for this?
I move that the commission appoint Mason Reuter to a 3-year term effective immediately and expiring June 30th, 2025, and reappoint David McDaniel to a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2025 to the Joint Planning Commission.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0.
All right, thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have December 15th storm update. Lyle?
Good evening, Commissioners. Lyle Pantel, Emergency Manager, Assistant Fire Chief, Ellis County. Just here to provide you a quick update on our December 15th wind/fire event. Last I discussed, I believe it was in the hands of the President to make a determination whether or not FEMA would do any reimbursements for this. It has been signed by the Office of the President. It's come back. I received an email last Friday from our program delivery manager for FEMA, and I have a meeting with them tomorrow to do what they're calling the exploratory call, 15, 20 minutes to really nail down what kind of costs we want to be reimbursed for. During our initial meeting with Kansas Department of Emergency Management personnel, they suggested that because of the language that was used, that it was a wind event, we would not be reimbursed for any of our costs or damages from the fire, but to submit 2 requests for public assistance. So I have gone ahead and done that, one pertaining to just the wind and one pertaining to the fire event, in the hopes that they will understand, had we not had the wind, we most likely would not have had our fire event. So I will wait and see what the phone call tomorrow brings with whether or not we will be reimbursed or can be reimbursed for those expenses. If nothing else, we can be reimbursed for the wind damages, signs, loss of road material, which Road and Bridge has done a fantastic job documenting all of those losses.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions you have at this time?
I know across the state, Lyle, there's been other fires caused, which spread because of the wind, Have they in their reporting said that theirs was a fire event or a wind event, or don't you know?
I don't know whether others had listed as a wind or fire, just our event for the period December 15th. They said it was a one-day event. We all know that our fire lasted 3 days. And they're saying that the wind event, just due to that one day, is all that's covered. I have spoke with other emergency managers from our region, and some of them have opted not to even attempt to have fire damages reimbursed due to the hassle of submitting all the paperwork, but not necessarily knowing they'll be reimbursed for them. I'm going to find out whether or not by submitting, so.
Sure. Okay. Commissioners, any questions for Lyle?
No, just think it would be really great if it all worked out. It'd be nice to get 85% back of what we've already spent, so.
Most certainly, and a large portion of that with the 3 box culverts that we had, or a good portion of that, which would not fall under the wind event, they would be under the fire event.
Yeah.
Commissioner Neal?
Thanks, Lyle, for the update, and I guess do what we can do, and it is what it is.
Yes, and I will return once I know more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good,
Commissioners.
Lyle. Thank you. Next agenda item is the ballistic vest purchase. Scott?
Good evening, Commissioners. Scott Brown, Ellis County Sheriff. So every 5 years, our vests come to expire, and so I've put together a bid for 22 vests for the sum of $33,506 for our certified officers. However, we also applied for the COPS grant, which we do every 5 years. In the past, we've been granted that, and if it granted, it would pay for 50% of that $33,506, which would come to $16,503. That would come out of our capital fund, Fund 16. I have the adequate funding within there to cover this right now. My guess would be that we would be covered and we'd receive that grant. We haven't thus far, and we've applied for it for as long as I can recall working for the Sheriff's Office. So I ask that you guys vote in favor of approving the ballistic vests.
You're asking for 22
Yes, sir.
ballistic
Yes.
vests? Is that one for every officer?
Yes, for all of our certified officers, and we have some in the jail, so we get them vests also because they come out and help us on the road, and that's one of the reasons we have certified people in the jail to take care of duties there, as well as to fill in if we run short on the road.
Has anyone ever been shot in the vest yet?
No, and
Good.
let's hope so. One of the questions was posed earlier of, well, when do they expire? And I said 5 years, and we've done some testing, and they're okay. They've held up, but I'm not sure we want to take a chance of not approving those, and they may or may not work, and it's a small price for the safety of our officers. So.
Absolutely. Commissioners, do you have questions? Commissioner Neal?
Great idea, because like say one vest that could be forgotten and old, and that's a life. That's a small amount to pay for the safety of our.
And I like keeping them on the 5-year process so we can cycle through and we know where they are. It's easy to keep track that way.
Commissioner Joe, questions?
No question. It's a extraordinarily low and reasonable cost, and half is anticipated to be reimbursed, so why wouldn't we?
Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I move to approve the purchase of 22 ballistic panels, carriers, and identification panels from Baysinger Uniform and Equipment for a total of $33,506.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Scott?
Scott.
Okay, the next is the fire hose purchase. Darren?
Good evening, Commissioners. Darren Myers, Director of Fire and Emergency Management. Before you is another public safety equipment purchase or request to purchase. We have fire hose throughout the county that's either used to connect to a hydrant or from a tender truck to the engine to be able to pump water onto a fire. There's different lengths and sizes that we would need. And overall, it's about 11,800 feet. And the only reason I looked up that is because that's going to how much we have to pull off every truck and then repack. So when you look at a total, it's about 5 miles of hose that we're going to have to handle if the purchase is done. But the hose is being replaced because it's getting old. We used to have an abundance of extra hose. Every year, the firefighters tested at each company on every single truck. That's per standards. It has to be tested at a certain PSI to be able to maintain hose leaks, coupling leaks, as well as any bursts. If a fire hose bursts, it can sever limbs or severely hurt somebody. But with the replacement of the hose, it would be replacing all the 1 3/4 and 2.5 inch on all the fire trucks, on all the companies. And it would be a several month project to do that. But this is a budgeted planned purchase out of it's not our Fund 16, but it's basically the fire department's Fund 16, our capital fund. And not looking forward to the work that it's going to entail, but this needs to be done because, like I say, our extra hose is no longer there. And each year since I've been here, we continue to have more hose fail every year during hose tests. So with that, I'm asking for the approval of the purchase and stand for any questions.
Okay. Yeah, Darren, what is the PSI in one of them hoses when you're fighting a fire?
They vary. There's a lot of science into the size of the hose, how long of a hose you're using, and then what kind of hose appliance or nozzle you have at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're actually fighting a fire with a 1 3/4 hose, you pump them at 150 PSI.
Okay.
But we pressure test them at over 300 PSI. So the couplings can separate, or you can actually blow a hole in the hose, and it literally just flails kind of like a balloon when you release it out of your hand until the pressure is taken under control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Commissioners, Commissioner Joe, any questions?
No question. It's budgeted, it's scheduled, so I have no questions.
Commissioner Neal?
The only thing is, I have a comment that it's going to be safe for our people. Supportive of that.
I will make one note on the quote that was given to us from Conrad Fire, from Danco. The asking amount is less than what was actually listed on there because the hose amount that they had quoted was had on there inaccurately. So there was actually just over a $5,000 reduction from what there is. So the amount that is listed on the agenda item is the correct amount of $33,658.
Okay. Commissioners, do I hear a motion for this?
I'll move to approve the purchase of 7657 to purchase fire hoses from Danco Emergency Equipment in the amount of $33,658.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Okay, the next item is the administration HVAC contract. Darren?
Before you tonight, and the heaviest piece of the agenda is about 80 or so pages of a contract for Glassman Corporation to complete the design build process of the heating, ventilation, air conditioning units here at the admin building. We've received those a couple weeks ago and reviewed those, and I also sent them to Mr. Jeter for review and approval as well. And we just need the permission for the commission chair to sign that, and we will get it returned back to Glassman Corporation so they can continue work on the project.
Well, I suppose if we want to get this done, we have to sign the contract, don't we?
Luckily, they have already decided to start. They had it scheduled, so they've been in the building. They started down here in the basement. I believe they're all done down here, and I believe at the end of last week, they were in the clerk's office doing that area of the building already, so they're proceeding through the building on certain stages of the project already.
Commissioners, are there any objections to signing the contract?
I have none.
Okay, we'll have her signed, Darren.
Thank you.
And let's see, then we have the county budget forecast. Darren?
Well, now this is where we put everybody to sleep with looking at millions of dollars worth of numbers. But it's time to start kicking off our budget season for the 2023 budget. There's a couple things I wanted to point out of where we kind of ended up last year, where we're at in 2022, and what the future looks like. So if I start getting too far into the weeds or speaking about stuff that's not as important as I may feel it is, please feel free to throw something light at me. But we ended last year in 2021 with our revenues exceeding our budgeted amounts by just over $400,000. In regards to the overall budget for expenditures, we were about 6% under budget, or about $1.25 million under budget, which is always good news. The 2 quarter-cent sales tax that were approved by voters in April of 2020 were fully collected in 2021. And as you can see, we captured about $300,000 after that was completed throughout the year, in excess of what we actually had budgeted for. And if the commissioner remembers, when we started looking at the 2020 sales tax and trying to plan for the following year, we were based off numbers of what we had when the old sales tax went into place. That was from 2013 to 2018. So we tried to anticipate that, but the sales tax have continued to grow in Ellis County since that time. So that's good news for us. Like I say, we collected far more than we anticipated, and they can still continue to show a trend of increasing month by month. Also, as the commission is aware, at the beginning of last year, we did switch over from the Kansas State Employee Health Plan to a 2-tiered, partially self-funded employee plan. And a little bit of a different policy, a little bit different of a approach with that. And when we first walked into that plan, it was almost sound like we were trying to do something that was too good to be true. Once we did move into it and went through the full year, we had an excess of over $600,000 in our employee benefit fund, that if we would have been on the state plan, it actually would have been a little bit of a different number, because their health insurance increase rates were over 3 times than what we paid last year, as well as in the years past. But we put over $600,000 into our employee benefit fund, and that stayed there. If we would have been on the state plan, that all would have been sent to the state. We would not have seen a dime. It would actually compound more to that if our interest rates from the banks were anything but at zero. But those continue to climb, and our numbers now, as of when I wrote this agenda item, was just under $1 million in that employee benefits fund at $918,000. So that is great news, as well as for the employees this year in 2022. The commission approved not increasing health insurance premiums for all the county employees as well, and that was due to having a fully funded, partially self-funded plan for the health insurance. So that's some great news for last year. When we start looking into the future, I know there's so many factors that play into that, and I'm going to put up a spreadsheet on the board here. And the more red you see, I know probably nobody in the entire room except for me can see any of these numbers, but I will zoom in. The more red you see on this, the worse off we are. So how I want to zoom in to look at this first column right in this area. Our budget policy basically states that at the end of the year or throughout the year, what we would like to see on our unencumbered cash is a 25% reserve. A 25% reserve of what our budget is about $5.6 million. In the past, because of financial hardships for the county, we have never been able to meet that. Our goal has always been try to be able to keep about a 15% unencumbered cash balance. So if you look through that line item, basically that blue column right through here states where we're at with the 2022 budget year. And with the current sales tax the way it is, without changing some variables, we pretty much meet our gap until that sales tax goes away in 2030. We knew that when the sales tax was passed, that that revenue is only as good as the 10-year period that we were going to have it. So as you can see, towards the far end of that graph, we start getting into the red until the county operations are going to have significant budget cuts again, and mill levy increases if necessary, if no changes were made. If we actually look at the policy, this line item right through here, you can see about halfway through the next 10 years, if we were to try to maintain a 25% unencumbered cash balance by the year 2028, we would not exceed that. But also what's good news about it is the way our county is being budgeted and funding at the current moment, the first time in many years, I looked back and I couldn't find over the last 11 years that we had an unencumbered cash balance that met our 25% budget setback. But the way we're sitting at now, by 2024, we'll be hitting that. Now, as you can imagine, our funding is the way it is now. There's certain variables on this. But if we keep our funding the way it is now, the mill levy the way it is now, based if, say, valuation stayed the same, after a certain amount of time, inflation, cost of living, contract services, fuel, employee cost, they all go up every year without most of any choice that we have. So before long, by doing nothing and keeping everything flat, we get back right to the point before we even had the sales tax implemented 2 years ago. And we start going back towards the negative, where we start having less excess funds available at the end of the year to help plan for the following budget year. But there are some, like I say, some big variables that I want to go across over the next few minutes. One is to look at this line here. Our current budget includes about $14.3 million that we get from ad valorem tax. So when we look at our actual budget, and we have about a $24 to $25 million budget, not all of our budget comes from property tax. And that's a big point for us to know, but also for the community. Only 14.3 out of the 24.6 million is ad valorem tax. So many other pieces come into play, from health insurance payments for the EMS, or current sales taxes, which is about 2.7 million, the pilot payments that we get from the Buckeye Wind Farm, the grants that many departments get, millions of dollars in grants. Some of the biggest grants we're getting now are over at the health department. All those play into an impact of what bridges that gap of that $14 million to $24 million budget. Over the last couple of years, I did a quick little sheet. Oops, I pulled up the wrong one. If you look at valuations over the last 5 years, there's only been an average of 1.5% increase in total valuation for the county for those 5 years. The 10-year average is only 0.76% increased in valuations. However, the farther you go back, for which data we have, a 15-year average percent evaluation increase is 2%. A 71-year average is just over 3% increase. So when you look at valuations into the future, that could play a big role as to, if the mill levy stayed the same, the valuations go up. The hard part is saying how much the valuations are going to go up each year and how that will forecast you. So you can, the way my spreadsheet that I have built is, if you look down here and we have all those red boxes, I can change the valuations on what they go up based on what percentages valuations could change. Right now, I have it set at a 1.5% increase in valuations. I could change that to a 2%, and those numbers go away a lot quicker. If valuations continue to climb at the 71-year average, those numbers would drastically decrease even more, and we'd have more funds by keeping the mill levy the same. But even over that, as you can tell from inflation this year, inflation is over 7.5%, which far will outweigh several years of what valuations could do into the future as well, in regards to our budget. So you could change that and do different things with the budget. I'm just going to put a 2% number in there. But as the commission is aware, our sales tax was passed in 2020, and it involves only a 10-year sales tax on the 2 quarter cents. So those do go away come 2020 or 2030, I'm sorry. So that's why these numbers start changing down here at the bottom. You start seeing the red box, because as of now, we have about 2.75 million budgeted for the 2022 budget. Projections are still higher than that, but if you lose, if inflation keeps going the way we're going, but we lose that $3 to $3.5 million in sales tax money, our current mill levy is about $400,000 per mill. So if you add, or if you try to divide that $3.5 million out of 400,000 is what a mill is, you're going to be losing about 8 to 10 mills in funding that is not currently or futuristically, I guess, put on the community members of the county. So that's something, I don't know if all three commissioners will be on the board in 2029, but that's going to be a heavy push as to what that sales tax looks like and putting that question back on the ballot. It's going to be a difficult one to decide how to do it for what the taxpayers will be willing to do. And one thing that I would make the suggestion is so that way we don't put ourselves in this position every 10 years is try to figure out a way that the community would be supportive to have a sales tax that wouldn't sunset. So that way the county would have a more stable revenue source into the future instead of having to readdress the issue every 10 years. Some other items to consider is, as Jerry was here a little bit ago, salaries, personnel. He's having a lot harder trouble than we are, but we know that 1 to 2, 3% pay increases this year, as well as probably next year, aren't going to be enough to satisfy some employees where they move off on others. What that may look like into the future plays a big role into this. The spreadsheet here, as you can tell, that we got a lot of red down there at the bottom, but that only includes a 2% pay raise for employees each year. You can change that to a 3%, and you can see how drastically that changes our budget forecast by just giving a 1% more pay increase each year to our employees. So that plays a big role. Health insurance. As I stated in the years past, we've averaged, I think it was 9.6% increase in health insurance each year. Luckily this year we kept that flat, but we did have a addition of 3.6%, but we did absorb it. But those costs we won't be able to absorb forever. So the health insurance can play a big role. If we had the same 3.5% that we had this year, you can tell the numbers get better. The red goes away. We have more funding into the future. But if health insurance rates continue to climb like we used to pay, has a big role. And I'm just doing these one by one. These aren't combination of several of them playing into the same course. And then if you look at just county budgets, this is all the budgets individually. If you look at commodities, contractual capital, everything that we're paying for that we have no control over, how much fuel increases, how much the contracts increase for the doctors and the nurses up in the jail, to everything that we're paying for contract services in the county out of Public Works. These numbers here only show a 1 or 2% budget increase every year. With inflation at 7%, who knows how much of an impact that's going to play throughout the process this year as department heads start looking at where we're at for the 2023 budget. Some other items to note here as well, capital. This doesn't play into increasing any capital expenditures. The commission is well aware that in 2021, the max amount that we're putting into capital just for roads and bridges was $329,000. With the budget increase this year, or not the budget increase, but the change in funding with the additional sales tax, we were able to put $800,000 in there. The plan was to hopefully be able to try to double that again next year to be able to at least do a lot of projects right and do them more timely. I can't remember which one of the commissioners were just visiting with Brendan before the meeting about another complaint that we have out there. We'll never be able to fix them all, but if we don't have the adequate funding to be able to repair the roads and bridges, at least on a more timely basis, those complaints are going to get worse. So this funding in here doesn't include any additional funding for road and bridge for the bridges or the road funds. So that's another item to keep in mind. With that, I can I know you can't actually see the numbers, you can just see the years as we progress from left to right on that spreadsheet. But I can make several several changes. We can increase the property valuations to the 71-year average of 3% to make it look better, and then you could increase, well, we want to put more money into reserve. But in all, the outcome is eventually going to end up the same come about 2030, 2031, once that sales tax drops off. And as I've explained to the commissioners in years past, these are only formulary. We have no idea on how these are going to actually impact us into the future. But I think the point of the fact is valuations in the mill levy need to be considered every year. And nobody likes to raise taxes. Nobody wants, but also at the same time, nobody wants their services cut. So we just need to be careful on how we do it and approach it each year, and continue not just don't look at, I asked the commission not to look at what 2023's impact is, but what does 2033 look like when we make these decisions. The other item that is in your packet is for the calendar for the 2023 budget process. So with all of that, I will stop, since nobody can actually see the numbers, just see the red lines and the blue lines, but stand for any questions from the commission.
Well, I think the calendar looks good, Darren. I'll approve the calendar. Other commissioners are okay with that. Just a couple comments from me. When I was installed on the Board of Commissioners, there was nothing but red on that sheet. And Administrator Phil, we was just to a point where we were going to be looking at layoffs. And if we hadn't got that sales tax, we would have. There's just no question about it. And that indeed could happen again. We don't know if by 2030 we'll get that sales tax renewed. We can only hope so. When you start talking about valuations and the mill levy, this year there has been a big increase in home values. The higher those values get, the less they're going to increase every year. You're just not going to have the same big impact every year as maybe this year had. So that's something to consider too. And I guess we just have to make the best decisions we can as we go forward, Commissioners. Questions, Commissioner Neal?
Just comment again, I'm gonna push for the reserves again, so we do have a little bit of reserve, and when we go into that process for 2023 to have a little something there.
Darren, do the auditors have a benchmark they want us to meet as far as having a year-end balance, or?
That's per commission discretion, and as I stated a little bit ago, we do have a policy that states that our goal is 25% year-end balance. So that's roughly, obviously that increases if our budget increases, but it's for 2022, 5.668 million in reserves. And the policy then would state that if we have an excess of that, as you can see on that bottom line, there's a couple years that we would be in excess as our current trends project. Anything over the 25% would be budgeted to go to capital reserves on whichever direction that the commission would choose, whether it goes to equipment for trucks or capital for buildings like a future HVAC project, or to a combination of any of those that the commission would choose. Or we could do more. We could 25 is just the budgetary number, or the policy number that the commission had set several years ago.
Okay. Commissioner Joe, comments?
Sure. I'd say when you go online and compare to budgets in the past, any metric you'd measure current performance by, we really have to, thank our department heads and the county administrator. When compared to, keeping in mind, when compared to like-sized communities in the state, we have the lowest mill levy. So we're very fortunate, even with the increase as far as valuations, with the mill levy staying where it's at. Like-sized communities were the lowest in the state. We're one of the lowest in the state, if not the lowest. And despite that, due to how the department heads and the county administrator have ran their departments overall at the top level, we've stayed under. We've done well. We've not had to cut services. We've not had to lay staff off. So I think we've done very well as an organization, and we can't predict what'll happen in 8 years, but hopefully the public would be supportive of continuing that sales tax so that we don't have to cut services or lay people off.
Well, I think when we look at that sales tax, it just doesn't go into the general fund and is spent. That money is earmarked for road and bridge projects, as well as for all of the health services we have in the community. So it is specific with those earmarks.
Yes.
I will also say on our mill levy too, I went back all the way to 2015, and the mill levy has only changed by about 0.6 of a mil since 2016. But like as Commissioner LaRue had stated, it's because of the valuations have also been allowed to keep that mill levy the same when valuations increase. So that's just something else I wanted to point out. There, you can go back a lot farther than that, but you get too far back, those numbers start to become skewed because the valuations are a lot different.
And currently, there's no lid on the mill levy. Is that correct?
Correct. Last year in the legislative session, they got rid of the tax law, or 2 years ago, I'm sorry. And then in 2021, when we prepared this year's budget, we now have to work with what's called the revenue neutral rate. So there's once the county clerk gets her evaluations from the appraiser's office, it goes into a formula on our accounting system, and it'll calculate a rate. And with valuations that go up, I would almost guarantee you that we will exceed that revenue neutral rate, so we'll have to have an extra budget hearing later. It's on that list, September, I believe. So that way we can either, the commission has to vote to exceed that revenue neutral rate. That's essentially what the new tax lid law is that we're more transparent to the community to make sure that they have a open voice that we are exceeding what that rate is.
Okay. Any other comments or questions, Commissioners? Okay.
Thank you, Darren.
I think we'll have this on next week's agenda as well. It's on that calendar for, gives the commission a good week to think about it, the budget, any questions, and then next week I'll ask direction from the commission is what you would like passed on to the department heads and the elected officials to start working with their first round of budgets for 2023.
Okay. County Administrator report. Darren?
I do have one thing that came in the mail. If the commission remembers, several months ago, the commission asked Commissioner Younger to be a part of a Zoom meeting to the Kansas Association of Counties to be able to accept the Kansas Human Resources Association as part of one of their board or one of their members. They didn't have enough, Commissioner Younger came in, but they didn't have enough voting members present. So they sent out a letter for the commission, one of the commissioners to be appointed to send their ballot in back to KAC. So I'm asking if Commissioner Younger still would like to do that, or if the commission is supportive of that or not.
Commissioner Younger? Sure.
Sure.
Fine with me.
I'll get with you and get that filled out.
Okay.
And I believe that's all I have.
Okay. County Commission reports. Commissioner Joe?
The only thing I have to report is I was able to get some time with Darren last week to go over in what I felt was a very detailed manner the budget that we're going to be working on between now and October. So that's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner Neal?
I'd just like to thank all those that attended. And if I could get Brandon to come up and give us an update on the bridge and the project in Victoria. And I did meet with Eric Ivy last week, Monday. He texted me he was in town, so he's with the wind farm, and we had a nice visit. So other than that.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brendan McKay, Ellis County Public Works Director. So a little update. They've started pouring the one lane over in Victoria on Cathedral Avenue. Part of the curb's already poured. they're moving along at a pretty good pace with that. They're almost up 10th Street, and then we're talking about potentially swapping over, or one of the options we're going to talk at our next meeting is continuing that lane all the way up through the length of the project and then switching sides. That way there's less hopping back and forth, less people driving on different sides of the road, but it's looking good and progressing well. Our KLBIP grant bridge, that's one of the ones where we took the one out on 140th Street over there by Ellis for $50,000 in funding. The bridge that was replaced on 310th, the North County line. That one's been poured, and we're actually backfilling today and should be finished up with that here this week, and that bridge will be fully open for travel. FAS 450, which is the one that failed last October, they had poured that deck here a week and a half ago. They 476 yards in one day. It's a lot of concrete.
It's a lot of concrete.
That they had their truck extended out as far as it would go, and that chute was moving up 4 or 5 feet with the truck moving with the material went through it. But that's progressing right along on track with schedule. So here pretty shortly, Northwest Business Corridor is moving along, which hopefully we'll be able to go through as long as weather's conducive enough for us. I mean, I would take the rain, but if we don't get it, we can drive through that Northwest Business Corridor project here at the end of the month for a road tour. They got dirt work done on that, and ditch lines getting close to grade, and they little change the schedule. Originally, they were going to close down Feedlot Road from 183 back on March 21st. They decided that with their current project and what they're currently working on, it wasn't necessary to. Here in a few weeks, they will be officially fully closing down Feedlot Road to through traffic all the way to 230th from 183. So it's a little change of plans on their part.
Okay.
So, anything else?
So when do you expect the Saline River Bridge to be operable?
Here within the next month or two.
Good, nice.
Weather keeps up good. They've made good progress.
Good.
So that's quite a feat to get that size bridge done as quickly as they have, including with all the weather that we've had for them to contend with. But they're moving along. They're a great company to work with.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon. And I have no commission report. And we have an executive session.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you have it?
I do.
Okay.
I move the Board of County Commissioners recess to executive session for 15 minutes under the following exception to the Kansas Open Meeting Act pursuant to the preliminary discussion of acquisition of real estate exception. The subject to be discussed during the executive session is possible land purchase, and those in attendance in addition to the Board of County Commissioners are Bill Jeter, Brendan McKay, and Darren Myers.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Hey, Sarah.
No further business. The commission meeting will adjourn at 6:29.